It's always exciting when you have media attend any of your events. So we were very fortunate yesterday to have Patty Fisher of the Mercury News with us at the Mount Pleasant High School reality tour. And we want to thank her for the fabulous article in today's paper on the efforts at Mount Pleasant High School to move young people, including young women, into the green building careers, and announcing this summit and the Girls' Day that's happening tomorrow. By 4:30 a.m., she already had a couple of comments about, oh, another feminist article, and then somebody saying, there's something wrong with this. So Patty seems to always be someone who writes and asks hard questions of our community, especially with regard to women and girls. So we're very excited that she has agreed to be here today as our moderator for our morning plenary panel, whether she's highlighting issues of veterans, domestic violence. She's one of the few journalists that's really brave enough to do so and using her voice to share the human side for the morning stories. So reading her column always makes us feel much more connected, and it really affirms the work we do and the fact that women do have a voice. So it is my sincere pleasure to welcome Patty Fisher.
Thank you, Esther. That was really very sweet. Thank you. I'm really happy to be here today to facilitate the conversation about economic security and advancement for women and girls. As you know, over the last quarter century, women have emerged as a powerful political force as voters and as elected officials, and research by the Women's Economic Security Campaign shows that this has improved economic security for women. Since the double-dip recession of 1980, women's role in the labor force has enjoyed a period of expansion. And as we move through the current economic recession and recovery, women are poised to be the engine of future economic growth. However, today, women comprise nearly half of all U.S. workers, and women's educational attainment is on a par or exceeds that of men. And while more women are joining unions and families are increasingly dependent on working women's incomes to meet basic needs, a lot of challenges remain. The pay gap has narrowed over the last 25 years, and yet the average full-time working woman still earns only 77 cents for every dollar earned by the average full-time working man. Certain non-traditional industries remain heavily gender segregated, including those in the green sector. According to a recent survey, there are 500,000 green jobs in California, but here's where they are. The manufacturing sector is the leading employer, and followed by construction and scientific and technical services administration and waste management and remediation services. Now, those aren't exactly typical women's jobs. So in light of the significant focus and investment on the growing green sector, we want to take time to share different perspectives about the new economy in Silicon Valley and what this means for women in terms of opportunity and advancement. And we have a great panel for you. We have with us Carl Guardino, President and CEO of the Silicon Valley Leadership Group, to help us better understand the new economy of Silicon Valley and provide us with a definition of the green economy. Also with us is Maureen Bjornsrud, CEO of the Bay Area Women's Sports Initiative, one of my favorite people, and to talk about Title IX and the progress made for women since its passage in the area of science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and sports. And finally, we're also joined today by Dr. Lynn Shaw, who as a former miner, steel worker, longshore worker, and journey-level electrician has firsthand insight into how non-traditional careers, including those in the green sector, offer new opportunities for women to advance and gain greater economic security. We'll hear from each of these three presenters, and as you listen, if you have questions or comments, fill out the cards that I think you have, right? And there's someone who can pass them out to you. Be sure to put your email address on it so that we can get back to you afterwards, and just hold it up and someone will come and get it, and hopefully we'll have time for some questions. Our first speaker is Carl Guardino. Carl is one of Silicon Valley's most distinguished business and community leaders, and he's the president and CEO of Silicon Valley Leadership Group, a public policy trade association that represents more than 300 of Silicon Valley's most respected companies. In February 2007, Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger appointed Guardino to a 4-year term on the California Transportation Commission. He also serves on numerous other boards and is actively involved in a wide range of community organizations and projects. In the year 2000, my newspaper, the San Jose Mercury News, named him one of the 5 most powerful people in Silicon Valley. So it must be true. Carl has been the chief executive of the leadership group since 1977, and before that he was a vice president. And in between, he held an executive position in governmental affairs with Hewlett-Packard. Earlier, he spent 6 years on the staff of Central Valley Assemblyman Rusty Reyes, the last 3 as his chief assistant. Known throughout the region as a consensus builder, Carl has championed a number of important issues, especially in the areas of transportation, housing, and education. So please welcome Carl Guardino.
Well, even great journalists need an editor, so I'll edit one comment. I have not been CEO since 1977. I was actually a sophomore in high school that year and truly enjoying myself. But I did come on, no, that's okay, but I did come on in 1996. Otherwise, you'd think, wow, is he really 70? He looks pretty good. It is truly a delight to be with you today. Thank you for the kind invitation. I do want to start, though, with a gift. My mom raised 4 sons. She was determined that we would all grow up to be gentlemen. And one of the first lessons that she tried to instill in each of us was when you are invited to someone's home or business, bring a gift. Bring something of incredible value that they will cherish forever. And I have done that today with a copy of our most recent CEO survey and projections report. I know what you're thinking, oh my word, that's amazing. Can I have 2? Yes, you can. I would also mention, with the holidays upon us, these make great stocking stuffers. Truly, I gave my wife a copy of last year's report for Valentine's Day. She is still talking about it. And you know, the couch is not as uncomfortable as I thought it was going to be. We are honored to be here. My colleague Galen is helping on one side to pass those out, and 2 women from the conference on the other side. And if I can figure out this clicker, oh. Then we will get started. I actually do very few presentations these days for 2 reasons, just from a time perspective, and second, audiences usually have better judgment than to invite me. But the reason I accepted today is both personal, quite frankly, and professional. And I can do music like that, too. There we go. Here's the personal one. Yeah, I look cute, don't I? It was an evening, Saturday, May 15, 2009, and I was speaking at City Year Silicon Valley's annual gala, and my legs started vibrating. And I thought, either I have a heart attack or that feels kind of neat. And as I stepped off stage, it was my phone. And my wife was calling to let me know that we had just received a call from an attorney in Utah, that if we could fly out the next morning and go straight to a hospital, that a brand new baby girl who had been born 4 hours earlier might be ours. So we dropped everything, flew to Utah, drove to Ogden, walked in, met the birth mom, everyone cried, and the next morning at 36 hours old, we were able to walk out with Sienna Alexandra Guardino. And thank you. Thank you. And that started a process for us because we were told by other adult friends who had been adopted themselves that when you adopt a baby of a different ethnicity, you become that ethnicity. And what we found out, living in a valley that has a Latina population that is growing remarkably in very exciting ways, was as we peeled back the onion, we started to find out some disturbing statistics, both in Utah as well as here in Silicon Valley, about how Latinas do in our education system. And that is primarily why I'm here today, and sharing with you what I was asked to talk about, a little bit about our economy. in Silicon Valley, where it is today, where it's going, and therefore where people like Sienna Alexandra in about 18 years can be fitting into that equation. Lots of statistics about how challenging it is. You probably heard those yesterday, or we could get to them in the Q&A. But I'm going to jump right into overall issues about our economy, if you don't mind. So let me do that. It's odd having to turn around, but there's no screen here, and I want to make sure we're on the right item. But as you may know, from a historical perspective, the organization that I have the honor of serving as CEO was founded 33 years ago by a true visionary of our valley, David Packard, the co-founder of Hewlett-Packard. And when he was asked by journalists, why does someone like David Packard need a group, and why are you involved in the community, this was his thoughtful response. Our job as CEOs is not to sit on the sidelines and either cheer or jeer. Our job is to get into the game and move the ball forward. And I think that's why we're all here today as well. Well, what I'd like to share with you today, and as I was asked, an overview of the economy, where we are and where we're going. As you know, Silicon Valley is about 2.4 million people, about 1 million jobs. Roughly 7,200 high-tech firms, another 1,800 biotech firms, but we're still lagging, even though it's improved slightly, with an unemployment rate in Silicon Valley of about 10.6%. We do, for the past 7 years, and we're about to go out in the field next week with year 8, an annual survey of CEOs. Last year, we had our most robust response. 153 CEOs filled it out. Doesn't sound very large in terms of the size, but those 153 CEOs alone have combined annual global revenue exceeding $1.7 trillion. We also released, and you have a copy of it, no, forgive me, you only have the main CEO survey, but we also released a supplemental survey of 304 venture-backed innovation economy startup CEOs, and that had amazing value in terms of where our economy is going with those innovation economy companies, and it's on our website. But let's talk job growth, and it's been fascinating to see this pan out as true. It was a positive message. This was last January, and the CEOs said for the balance of 2010, so now we can look back and see that it was true, by a 3-to-1 ratio, the CEOs saw more job growth within their industry cluster. By a 7-to-1 ratio, they were bullish about job growth within their own companies, and we're seeing that. Well, I'm not going to depress you today. We're actually going to celebrate some of Silicon Valley's strengths. There are reasons why waves of innovation continue to break on the shores of Silicon Valley. It's not by happenstance. It's because of some of these strengths. And I have time today to quickly list 6: talent, technology, temperament, training, treasure, and temperature. And I hope you appreciate the 6 because I stayed up all night trying to figure out the alliteration for these items. So let's jump right in with talent. The diversity of Silicon Valley is what unites us and gives us strength. 53% of the engineers fueling innovation economy companies in Silicon Valley are foreign-born. More than 50% of our CEOs and founders of companies today are foreign-born. More than 50% of U.S. college professors teaching advanced technical degrees are foreign-born, and well over 50% of the college graduates earning those technical degrees are foreign-born. And 51.2% of U.S. full-time workforce are women, and more than half of U.S. college graduates are women. That first statistic on women, it was 49.9% until March 1st of last year. That was the tipping point. And it's already continuing to gather momentum. So the talent we have, women and men of people all over the world, are a strength of the Valley. The examples are endless. A few that I would mention: Hannah Kane, the energetic CEO of Alum; Sangeeta Verma, an innovation economy startup CEO at TAG; Sergey Brin, Andrew Grove, Jerry Yang. The list is endless, and they're fueling our economy. The second is technology, and again, that's the waves of innovation that have happened here, starting in the 40s and 50s with aerospace and defense, the 60s with semiconductors, 70s personal computers, and then on with software, internet, green tech, smartphones, electric vehicles. They keep happening here. The third is a mindset. It makes headlines in the Mercury News when CEOs attack each other. Things make headlines when they're unusual, not when they're commonplace. And that's because in Silicon Valley, people are more bridge builders than burners. A friend of mine, Enrique Salem, is the CEO of Symantec Corporation, and he puts it this way: we've invented words. We don't have friends, we don't have enemies, we have frenemies. When we are talking about competition, but also collaboration, we have co-opetition, because today's rival is tomorrow's partner, or sometimes on the same day, your rival is also your customer. So we tend not to burn bridges, and that's the strength of the Valley. The fourth is training. The Economist magazine, about every other year, rates the top universities in the world. 3 of the 15 top universities in the world are right here in Silicon Valley and the Bay Area. The next one, going to the green economy theme, is treasure. Venture capitalists continue to put their wallets where their words are. And as you look at this statistic, one of the more recent ones, Bay Area companies receive nearly half of all venture capital funding nationwide. That is also true with clean and green tech. And if you look at the number of the Bay Area, other than Southern California, no other region in the country is even double digit. That is an incredible strength of our valley. And then finally, with 300 days of sunny weather a year with an average temperature of 72 degrees, face it, the weather does not suck. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't face challenges. And in that report, that stocking stuffer that we've provided for you, there are challenges that we have to address. When we ask those 153 CEOs, what are the biggest business challenges that you face as an employer in Silicon Valley competing on a global stage? Number 1, homes that working families can afford. Number 2, business taxes. 3, recruitment costs, which goes back to number 1. Number 4, the state budget structure. By the way, that was the first time in the history of this survey that the state's budget, governance, and fiscal structure was listed as a concern. And then finally, healthcare costs. If you notice the sign with my time, she said, speak as long as you want, and I really appreciate that. That wasn't what you said. Okay, 5 minutes, we're moving. Second, we asked those same CEOs, what's the main concern you hear from your employees? Because in a knowledge-based economy, that is your most precious resource, the women and men that fuel our companies. Number 1 with their employees, same thing, housing costs. Number 2, taxes, so there's a corollary there as well. 3, traffic congestion. 4, healthcare. 5th, a quality K-12 education system for their kids. When we ask then, and what are the main actions the state can take to strengthen Silicon Valley's economy? Look at the bookends. Number 1, number 5, education and higher education. And then in the middle, linked to taxes again, traffic, we see the correlation, and then housing. What is wonderful about this, when the issues are the same that employers agree to and employees agree to, when the boardrooms and the living rooms are aligned, we have an opportunity to make change. And when we also agree, that's what we need to see from government at all levels. I'm going to have to skip through some of the solutions because I want to be respectful of time, but I'm going to go to the third, because we took 3 of those top ones, housing and traffic and education, so that we know collectively we're doing something about it as an organization and collectively as a community. But I want to focus on this one because it's so relevant here. For the past 3 years, we've tried something that we hope is adding value. It's a math initiative for K-8 teachers in our poorest performing schools, which also correlate to schools with poor children and it correlates overwhelmingly to kids of color. And what we have tried to do is provide 80 hours of intense math content instruction to those teachers who rarely get these opportunities, and their students who rarely catch a break, being the beneficiaries of those teachers' increased knowledge. And it has been fascinating. What you value, you measure. At the beginning of the 80 hours, we measure how these teachers do on a math test. On average, really fine people who don't know the subject matter. In California, you need one math class to get your multiple subject credential. And yet you're supposed to be able to teach all the way up to Algebra 1, statistics, etc., on one math class. Again, fine people, but don't have the knowledge base. So when we tested them, beginning of 80 hours, average test score, 64%. When I was in school, that was an F. I know, because I saw that number a lot. End of 80 hours, 87%, B plus, A minus. And when you know something, you can teach it better. And you can be passionate about it. And that's how we're trying to equip these teachers to go back in groups of 30 to 150 a year in terms of their student population to teach our kids. We've trained about 200 teachers in the first 3 years. We are going to train another 100 alone this coming summer. So what is the value if we can increase the ability for women, in my case, caring deeply about Latinas like my daughter Sienna Alexandra, in a job, if we can do that job here in Silicon Valley and have the workforce trained and ready in such a diverse society? Well, just look at this for a moment. 3 examples. These are not our numbers. These are State of California Economic Development Department numbers. One job in semiconductor manufacturing creates 5 more jobs, indirect and induced. Total, 6 new jobs with $476,000 in wages and benefits, of which nearly $71,000 goes to taxes and fees to government to provide the social services and infrastructure that we all need. One job does that. It gets even better. Electronic computer manufacturing, 1 job creates 8. Those 9 jobs, over $800,000 in wages and benefits, nearly $115,000 in revenue for government services and programs. Biotech side of the equation, similar. 1 creates 7 more, those 8 over $700,000, over $100,000 in revenue. We need each other, public and private, and we work best together when we have those ingredients. This is the final slide that I just like to share whenever I speak because it's important. We've gone through some tough years in Silicon Valley, and a lot of people can be down about that, but we have to place things in perspective. While we suffer through a 10.6% unemployment rate, which is awful for those people who are unemployed and underemployed, not even captured by that statistic, remember that we are still the envy of the Earth's innovation economy. A friend of mine, Ross Duvall, works for the Milken Institute, and we occasionally speak together on panels. He designed this on a napkin on an airplane. We've all done it, right? But he just wrote down all the places he has spoken that call themselves Silicon something, trying to capture the magic and the imagination that we have collectively created here. My favorite, I don't know if this has a laser, it does. My favorite, who is the brain trust in Southern Florida who actually thought it would attract innovation economy employers and employees if they called themselves the Silicon Swamp? Makes you want to move there, doesn't it? Big picture, our best days are in front of us if we prepare our kids, all of our children, especially our girls, that they have a role to play in the innovation economy. Thank you for inviting me today.
Thank you, Carl. As he said, fortunately, his daughter's lucky that she doesn't look like him. They had to go to Utah to make sure that didn't happen. I'll try to introduce Marlene without aging her 20 years. Sorry about that. I'm not as good a reader as I used to be. Marlene Bjornsrud has more than 30 years' experience in management and nonprofit work and was previously